In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another emergency edition of the Daily Memphian's Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is Drew Hill, joined as always by Chris Herrington. We are recording early on a Monday because there's an awful lot that happened this weekend, Chris. Every once in a while, a guy tries to take a weekend off.
Right.
And I was planned for quite a long time. To go to Fayetteville this weekend, do a little cabin in out in the woods in the country, and with a couple of friends. And I was indeed watching the Grizzlies game on Friday night against the Los Angeles Lakers. And then I checked my phone after the game, and I came to realize that quite a lot was going on. and Chris was there at the game for us and obviously had it all covered. There was the drama between what appears to be the coaching staff and Ja Morant, and then the one-game suspension, and then the Grizzlies game on Sunday night against the Raptors. But Chris, I want to start here because I'm sure a lot of people just want to know what happened. Like, can you just give your version of what happened and what you saw that night at the game, and what transpired with Ja in the locker room afterwards?
Yeah, obviously the flashpoint for this was Ja spouting off in the locker room after the game. I was one of, I don't know how many reporters were there, but there were three of us who asked some questions. There may have been one or two other people in the room, I can't remember. That was the flashpoint for all this, right? But there's a before and an after, and I think we have to expand beyond that moment. So let's talk about the game, right? Because to me, that's really the main thing. As far as the locker room stuff, we walk in vulnerable situations where guys are emotional. They've just played games. We stick microphones and cameras in their faces. And sometimes, their emotions get the better of them. That would be one thing. I can be forgiving of that kind of stuff. But to me, the underlying thing is what happened in the game itself, which set all this off. And it was interesting because, in the first half, I thought Morant looked okay. He had 8 points. He had 3 or 4 assists. He was making some paint plays on and off the ball. He had a play where he was playing off the ball and did a baseline cut for a layup, right? He was playing okay. The Grizzlies are up 14 at the half. A lot of their best stuff was when he was on the bench, but still, he played okay. They're up 14. Everything seems fine. And then he comes out in the second half, and he has no energy. No energy at all. It looked like initially the old guy at the gym who can't run anymore, but can still kind of knows what to do. So he had some nice assists, but they were all stand still outside the 3-point line. Throw a lob to Jock Landale, throw a skip pass for a GD3. He rarely, in his first stint, and the stint thing is something we can talk about. In his first stint in the second half, he rarely crossed the 3-point line and never made an aggressive move into the paint. And watching him, I didn't think Josh quit on this game. I thought, what's up? Is he sick? Is there something going on that's I thought maybe he was battling an illness. I didn't know what was going on, but he clearly wasn't right. And by the time it got to the fourth quarter and that final stint, it was clear that he just was not trying at all. I mean, he was basically a bystander. It was very passive aggressive. He was standing around watching Cam Spencer and Jalen Wells and Santi Aldama try to create stuff while they're losing this game. And so at that point, it was clear something's wrong. Something's up with Ja. We don't know what it is, but something's up. So the game ends. We go, this, listeners may or not have different levels of sort of awareness of how post-game stuff works. The first thing that happens is everyone goes to the media room where the coach speaks. Because the standard protocol is, for the NBA media writ large, for all the teams, standard protocol is the coach does his post-game address to assembled media, and then they open the locker room after his address, right? Sometimes those two things bleed over if players are in a hurry, and that has happened before. So we go in the post-game, and Islo's taking longer than usual to come out. Again, not unprecedented. The media communications person says, Ja's getting dressed now. We're going to go ahead and open the locker room so you don't miss Ja. Also not unprecedented, but these two things overlap.
That has happened, but let's just that's happened with Derrick Rose before.
Yeah.
That's happened with Vince Williams Jr. There's no need for a conspiracy here.
Yeah.
It like this does happen. This wasn't that's not anything crazy. Anyway,
And so people start going to the locker room, and there's a hallway, I think I would say a medium length hallway that separates the two. And what tends to happen is some people, when these things do happen, what tends to happen is some people go to the locker room and some people stay behind for the coach's presser. Well, and in the rush of things, I'm not paying attention to who's doing what, and neither is probably DeMichael Cole from the CA or whatever. If you and I had both been there, we would have communicated about it, right? Who's going to go, who's going to stay. But it's just like, oh, Ja's getting dressed. And so everyone hurries to go to the locker room because clearly we need to talk to Ja about what just happened in this game. And so we get to the locker room, and because it was a Halloween night, 8:30 tip, there was less media there than usual. You would think more media because of the Lakers. There was actually less. So we get to the locker room, and it's a 1-minute situation. It's me, it's DeMichael Cole from the CA, it's Terry Davis from the Tri-State Defender. I think we were the three people who ended up asking questions. So we sort of bat around a few questions. We don't need to go over all that because I think everyone listening to this knows what was said in the locker room. They've read it, they've seen it, whatever. So that happens.
Well, we can just summarize it with Josh said repeatedly, go ask the coach.
Goes to the coaching staff, go ask the coaching staff. He alluded to comments in the locker room. He was asked, what could have gone better? He said, apparently not play me. That's what they said. He said they had a whole spiel in here. Then at the very end, when the communication staffer is trying to end it, I get in a last question because I wanted to make sure. I said, you are not sick. You are not injured. He said, no, I'm fine. I'm good. So it was not about that. So then we all turned to head back to the media room because he still hasn't spoken yet. We're about 2/3 of the way down the hall to get there. Again, it's a medium-length hallway. We're about 2/3 of the way down the hallway. Islo is coming out. Now, he's got like 3 steps from the exit to where he can go back into the coach's area, the locker room. And so he comes out as people are approaching the door. And I can't speak for other people, but my initial thought was not, oh, Islo didn't take questions, because I assumed someone had stayed in there, right? I didn't know. I thought, oh, I missed it, right? And it wasn't until we entered the media room that we realized, no, there was no media at all. And so we asked, he didn't take questions. And a communication staffer said, well, one of us asked him for his thoughts on the game. And he gave and it was in my story, but he gave a generic response. There was no question specifically about Ja Morant, no answer specifically about Ja Morant. It was sort of a generic statement. And that was it. And that got us to Saturday, where the 1-game suspension comes down.
Want to make a big impact without getting lost in a big system? Join Youth Villages to be a force for families while becoming part of one. Help make positive changes on a national scale, one community at a time. It takes a family to transform lives. Start with yours. Apply now at youthvillages.org/careers.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. Oh, man. We will have to talk about the rotations. We'll have to talk about Ja, overall.
The big mystery here, and to me, there's 3 buckets. There's the game itself. There's the aftermath of the game, which includes him spouting off in the suspension. And then there's the what happens going forward. And we have a game tonight as we speak where Ja's presumably going to play, and it's going to be a big story. The mystery in all of this is what there's been the focus on, because everyone knows what he said. Everyone knows what he said publicly to the media after the game, right? Calling out the coaching staff, essentially. And everyone can surmise in the gap between the way he played that second half and what he said after the game that there was a confrontation in the middle that was not public. And the implication is that Islo called him out for his efforts, and there was there was something happened there, right? Some friction around, in front of the other coaches and players, and that partly is what led to this. What we don't know still is why he basically, I called it quiet quitting in my column, right? Which is a sort of a modern term of, it's not that, it's not showing up, it's showing up and not doing anything. It's clocking in and then going through the motions and doing the absolute bare minimum you can do to get through your day on the clock, which is to me what he did in the second half. What we still don't really know, and we can guess around it, but we don't know why that happened. Why did he approach the second half of that game that way? Not only did he quit on a game, he quit on a game where they're up 14 coming out of the half and their first nationally broadcast game of the season against the Lakers.
Yeah, no, and we may not get the answer to that.
That's right.
But the following day on Saturday, I think the most we got was from Shams, this may have been Sunday morning, in which
it was ESPN's like a Sports Center or some kind of ESPN TV hit,
where he said, there was an exchange between Ja and Tomas after the game, and essentially that it didn't go well, and Ja voiced his frustrations to the media, and then the Grizzlies chose to suspend him, and he said, teams around the league are going to be monitoring the situation between Morant's relationship with the Grizzlies, and that both sides were looking to move on, essentially. Looking to move forward, sorry.
But there was another thing. There was another TV hit that Shams did, and this was on Sunday. At least I saw it on Sunday, after I'd written my column, where he said, one of the things I wrote in my column, and I was very clear that this is educated guesswork. That's why I labeled it, is that I feel like I have noticed, going back to the first 3 home games, there have been moments where I've noticed frustration from Ja in particular, but also some other players in what to me seemed to be frustration about the substitution patterns. It's like, and I actually referenced this in a game. It may have just been on social media, it may not have been a column, but I did write this somewhere. I think it was just on maybe a Blue Sky post. There was a moment in one of the first 3 home games where the team got off to a slow start, and then 3 possessions in a row they scored. Ja scored, Ja assisted, Ja scored. Boom, boom, boom. You can feel the rhythm picking up, and then he gets subbed out. And it's clearly a pre-subscribed substitution pattern with these quick substitutions and the quick stints. And I could see Ja sort of like excelling and sort of like in a frustration of like, I'm coming out now. And I've seen that thing from other players. And my educated guess is that at some level, that is at least one of the frustrations here. And then in Shams Charania's television hit on Sunday, he did say that there had been tension over the previous few days over substitution patterns and plays. And that's all that he said.
Yeah. And I think that look, it means nothing because everybody knows that Shams is well-sourced.
Right.
But I think I've been able to get some news, and I can confirm, like, essentially what Shams has said is essentially what I have heard. And I think that, now the question becomes, and you're right, we would be right to ask about the substitution patterns, and we'll see if Isolo is willing to change it. Nothing changed against Toronto last night. At least I didn't think from a substitution pattern standpoint. He still played a lot of players last night and even tried different stuff at the end of the game as the team was sort of falling behind, putting in Omax Prosper and all that. Like, that may be a correct guess if we're trying to guess, what has led to this and what the frustrations are.
Well, here's the problem with this. Here's the problem with that. From my end, that's a guess, right? It feels insufficient because it's too small of a thing this early in the season to have a blow up like this about, to me. And then B, like, that's still what specifically in this Lakers game set it off, right? He just had his best game of the season, maybe against the Suns with the same like stuff. And to me, if this is strictly about substitution patterns, play calling, on-court stuff, and it seems to be, by all indications, it is just about that kind of stuff, then even if Morant has legitimate frustrations in those areas, which he might, his reaction to me on the court and off seems premature. It seems disproportionate to the problem. And obviously it seems immature, but it also seems premature, like we're 5 games in when this happened.
That's sort of what I'm getting to here, which is that at some point, communication has to go wrong, right? In order to reach this level.
Right.
When did that happen is a very good question. Did that happen at halftime of the Lakers game?
Did it happen sometime in the first half? I don't know.
Yeah. And it's not like Ja hasn't commented about communication and been positive about it with Isolo in the past. He's talked about how upfront he is and, he's honest. And a lot of the coaches have said he's very straight to the point, no nonsense, type of thing. And Ja's been, generally, for lack of a better word, positive as it relates to the communication with Isolo. But clearly that got sidetracked at some point because I don't think he's giving that answer after the game if that was not the case. And so I think that there's still a lot to figure out. I mean, we can continue to unpack the situation, but now it is what it is. Last night, right before the game, Ja posts on Instagram, on his Instagram story. This comes seconds after, Islo had said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, when it came to the Ja thing, it was, we made a decision that aligns with the standards of the organization. We look forward to welcoming Ja back and moving on, or something along those lines. The Grizzlies will play today on Monday, so that we're assuming is going to happen today. So I did take note of the fact that Ja posted on Instagram a sign that said, "Let's go Grizzlies."
Right.
That seems to be in line with what Sham said about both sides are ready to move forward. Islo used different words, said ready to move on from the suspension he was talking about in the moment. And so do we think that this is something that will be – what do we think Ja's going to say about this tonight? And do we think that this will be something that they can move on from quickly, or is this just another chapter in the Ja Morant book in Memphis that and we're wondering when this book is going to eventually close?
For better or worse, and I actually think there's some of both here. For better or worse, Ja is someone who has struggles to stay on script with stuff like this. Like, I'm sure there is something he's supposed to say.
I wrote about this, by the way, this summer. Not to interrupt, but like if you go read the stuff about Ja with Nike in Asia, like a lot of it is you go over there to do these marketing tours, and the players are told exactly what to say and what to do, and like they don't do that. Like Ja's team will be like, "Thanks, but no thanks." Like we're just. Ja's going to be Ja. We're going to, It's very much the same thing with the Grizzlies, I think. Like that's not hard to figure out.
Right. He is clearly a very temperamental and moody player. But that aspect of his personality has fed a lot of his worst moments. It's also fed a lot of his best moments.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of playing with that chippiness and that edge. And he has struggled, I think, to channel that aspect of his personality in a positive direction in a consistent way. But on some level, also admire that there's not a lot of phoniness to him,
Nope.
Which I respect. I don't respect the actions all the time, but I respect the authenticity. And so I don't know how he'll respond. They're not doing a shoot around today, as they typically don't. Second day of a back-to-back, they don't do shoot-around, so it's not something they've not done because of the Ja thing.
They got back to Memphis late last night. The guys have to sleep at some point. So.
Standard procedure. They're not doing a shoot-around. But what that means is he's probably – in theory, they could make him available before the game. That's not typically the case. And so it seems like he's probably not going to talk until after the game. We'll see. We'll find out when we get to the arena.
The locker room does open for media before the game. The thing about it is that the players that are star players typically they are warming up during and that's intentional, during the pregame media session.
Right.
So I would not expect Ja to say anything until after the game, assuming that he does play in the game. Because if he does not play in the game, then which it would be alarming, I think, if he did not play.
Yeah.
But if he does play in the game, he will have to say something after the game. And
because it'll be after the game, his mood is going to be impacted in part by what's happened in the game.
Yeah.
And
so, it may be better to get out in front of this.
I think they should. I mean, they don't. I don't offer them media relations advice, and they don't solicit it. But like, I would have him talk before the game. When he has some better control of his emotions, and he can try to convey whatever message he has decided to convey, because in sort of the same thing, like I said before, Friday night, like it's an emotional moment and you're sticking a mic in the face right in the middle of the emotional moment. And so if they come out and even if he has positive attitude about the whole thing and then they lose the game, he's not going to be in a great mood because you've lost the game. And so he should probably talk before the game, but we'll see.
What do you make of this idea, as Sham said it, that teams around the league are monitoring the relationship between Ja and the Grizzlies?
I think every team in the league is monitoring every situation at all times, basically. And I think the media, the NBA apparatus is so hungry for transactions and stuff like that you're going to go to that, but it's also true. But I don't think.
Okay,
I don't think there's a robust. I would suspect there is not a robust trade market for Ja Morant right now.
That's what I was getting to.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to get there eventually, but I don't suspect that either.
Are there teams thinking, hey, can we buy low and take a chance on this? Maybe they're looking at that, right?
The question now becomes, what is the relationship between Ja and the Grizzlies?
Right.
How damaging was this particular moment?
Yep.
If at all damaging. And how do the Grizzlies still feel about we spent all offseason talking about how this season is so important to figure out if you still believe you can build a title contending team around Ja and Jaren. Like, that has been a big part of it. Do you believe you can put the right pieces around those two guys? And now we've had, maybe not quite like a step backwards in the way some of the other suspensions were, but at least a hiccup here, a little speed bump in terms of trying to figure the plan out, in addition to all the injuries that have happened. Do you think we can reasonably infer, whether this is meaningful to Ja, this experience is meaningful to Ja's future in the city?
So it doesn't seem to be an immediate break, because he is, by all indications, by what everyone has said, and what he himself has indicated on social media, he's going to play tonight, and they're trying to move forward, right? And so I think this did damage, not necessarily irreparable damage. I used a line in my column that said, could this fissure be a breakthrough? That's just asking an open-ended question. I mean, there is, at some level, there is maybe he's not used to being confronted by this, and maybe this ultimately has positive effects down the line if they can get through it. Maybe it builds some kind of respect.
Yep.
So that's a possibility too. I suspect they will give it time to see if that's the case, because again, it's not like, I don't think there's no Desmond Bane level offer, I don't believe would be out there for Ja Morant. And frankly, I think the Grizzlies were surprised to get what they got for Desmond Bane. And so, but I think, like we've said, this season is potentially a pivot point season for the franchise. And now this is like an earlier pivot point within that season on the Morant thing. The reality is, we learned this with the Luka Doncic thing last season. Like, things could happen any moment and catch you by surprise. A Ja Morant trade at 5 minutes from now would not be as surprising as that Luka Doncic trade was last season. But I would be extremely surprised. I do think that this is going to play out over weeks, probably over months. And then I think at some point, whether it's later this season or into next summer, like, decisions are going to be made. It could string out longer than that. I'll say this. There's a clock ticking. It's a long clock. Ja's got 2 years left on his current contract after this one, so that buys time. But I don't see Ja Morant playing with the Grizzlies in the final year of that contract without an extension, which would be not next season, but the season after. Like, I don't think, could you take it in even into next season without an extension? Maybe. But I don't think you take it into the final season of that contract without an extension. I think some decision has to be made, in the somewhat near term about the long-term commitment. Yeah,
I think, just broadly speaking, the hope is a moment like this is going to gather more respect
that's the hope.
Between Ja and between Tomas.
Right.
And but let's be honest. As things stand right now, there's an awful lot of Tomas Isolos out there, successful European coaches who haven't done anything in the NBA. And there's not a lot of Ja Morants who are capable of doing that on the basketball court. And so if this is a tug of war, there's one side that has, I mean, it doesn't technically make sense, but we see this happen all the time in the NBA where there's friction. To the extent that this is a tug of war, Morant has quite the bit of pull.
I think that this is a situation where the jury right now is very much out on both of these figures, on Ja Morant and an Isolo. But it's a little different in that I think Ja's lost a lot of leverage, and so I think the focus is on Ja Morant, and it should be, because, like I said earlier, what he did, even if he had legitimate basketball frustrations, I'm not saying that he did, but even if he did, what he did was out of proportion. It was premature. It was immature. like he's earned the sort of negative spotlight that's on him right now. But that is also like obscured, like it's an open question about Isolo as an NBA coach on and off the floor. It's a very much open question. We don't know. So I think the next month or two is probably important for both of those people in terms of what their futures are.
It's also interesting in the manner that it aligns with Zach Kleiman, who paid the buyout to bring Isolo to Memphis.
Well, that's
who admitted that he did not interview another candidate, and clearly that was his guy. Like, felt very good about it. And 6 games into the regular season, there's already tension between this coach that Memphis made a huge priority to bring over, even when they had Taylor Jenkins hired as head coach and then upgraded. So I don't know. Like, it's interesting how all these figures are sort of intertwined in this moment.
Well, this is why I go back to the game itself a little bit, because I can't think of a rationale or I can't think of a precipitating incident or a legitimate frustration that's so legitimate it excuses basically quitting on the team in the second half of a game.
Yeah,
and so that's why I just, I think the spotlight is on Ja right now.
Listen, I'm definitely not suggesting that someone else was in the wrong of the situation.
Right.
Because you can't, you're making $40 million a year, and you're supposed to be the leader of the team. You can't quit on a basketball game like that. But at the same time,
but there's an evaluation of Isolo.
I
think beyond just the Ja thing.
I absolutely think that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. Now, it's been 6 games.
So that's my point.
So like,
they were 3-2 with a 14-point lead at halftime.
Yeah. No, it's been 6 games. And this is the guy that keeps saying he finds the solutions, find the solution. Got to give him at least some time to find the solution. Yeah. If that exists. And
maybe a little bit of time to, you never know if you're going to get healthy because other guys get hurt. But like, they played that game in Toronto, and we don't have time to, this is a Ja Morant podcast. We don't have time to go in the deep on the other stuff. But they played that game without Ja. We'd wondered, like, what were they going to look like once the Jerome and Pippen injury happened? What are they going to look like when Ja misses a game? We didn't think he'd miss a game for that reason. But we saw what it looked like, and like, it's hard to win a game on the road when you don't have a point guard. I mean, the only real point guard you had is the second-round draft pick rookie,
That's right. And this is a podcast about Ja. And watching that Raptors game last night, the shot clock was draining late over and over and over again. It's like, this team has no creativity when he's not on the court.
Right.
Like, they have no way to get good shots. And so, it's a real problem, especially with the Scottie Pippen and Ty Jerome thing. And the other thing about Isolo that's just like, and again, it's been 6 games. He still hadn't figured out the best way to use Jaren. Like, no. They still haven't really found that balance. And some of it's on Jaren, by the way. Like, he's just got to be better. But his usage rate is like,
but he is a big, like the offense doesn't start with the ball in his hand, unlike a Ja Morant. And so there is a team component to getting that player the ball in certain situations.
They didn't, sure. But at the same time, they didn't necessarily struggle with that in the lost season, 23-24. That was this gap year, but it was also the year Jaren made this massive leap.
This is my point.
And his usage rate was way up, right?
That's why
Ja wasn't playing that
getting those
either.
touches, what he does with those touches is a different thing. But getting those touches is more about the coaching and the team structure around him when you're a big.
Right. So, I think that there's some figuring out there too. It's not just the relationship with Ja. Like, he's going to have to figure that out too. Right. So it's been a whirlwind weekend, Chris. What are we missing? Is there anything else we've missed here on the Ja stuff? Isolo? Anything else?
No, suspension? I mean, it's set up like, Monday night against the Pistons is, if you can't make it to the arena, this is must-see TV, I think. Let's see how this goes. I think all eyes are going to be on Morant and like how aggressively he attacks this game. Like, the Pistons are good. The Grizzlies are still playing without a lot of guys. This is not a win or lose referendum on Ja Morant or Isolo in one game, but how aggressively Morant attacks the game, how engaged he is in the game, what his interactions are with Isolo. Those are the things that, win or lose, there's going to be a real focus on tonight.
What do we think the reception will be?
I think in the building, I think if he comes out, it'll be positive. And if he plays hard out of the gate, there will be the crowd will, I think, swell up to try to buoy him, yeah.
Yeah, buoy.
To try to raise him up, right?
Yeah.
I think that will be the case. I think if he seems, I do not think this will happen, but if he seemed petulant or whatever, I would be very surprised if that were the case.
Maybe if you're going to say something, better to do it before the game.
Yeah. I think as much as people want Ja to be great in Memphis. Grizzlies fans, a lot of Grizzlies fans are frustrated and fed up, but this guy is really an exceptional talent and very exciting. He's on your basketball team and people desperately want it to work. And so I think there will be the real urge from the crowd will be to try to raise him up, I think.
I agree with what you said, and I think people would love for it to work.
Yes.
I do think at this moment, it's that the loyalty behind Ja is being tested because of what happened on the court on Friday. And I think in the end, most people, the vast majority of people, will still hope that Ja continues to be a box office figure and hopefully a staple figure in what can become a championship team for Memphis instead of the decision to go the other direction. But it's like one of the most interesting times in the Ja Morant era of the Memphis Grizzlies is right now in this exact moment. And I'll be very interested to see what the response is tonight and see what the reception is from the crowd and how he plays and, with the organization and Isla, because, Isla gave an opening statement in Toronto, but
there weren't people there to really push him on the Ja stuff, and he will talk before the game. We don't know whether Ja will, but Isla will.
And that will happen tonight. We will be. They'll probably say he's not going to take questions on it, but he's going to get asked. That's for certain. So we will see what happens. But thanks for listening. We'll probably be back this week again for a second time, just since this was a Ja-only emergency pod. But make sure you're going and reading the stuff over at the Daily Memphian. You can read what Chris wrote from the Lakers game and afterwards. And you can read my story from Sunday night in the loss to the Raptors. We'll see you later. For Drew and for Chris, we're out of here.